Today we are visiting the world-famous Horseshoe Curve Railroad grade, about 4 miles west of Altoona, Pennsylvania. The Horseshoe Curve was an engineering marvel in its day and was built in 1854 by the old Pennsylvania Railroad. It became the final link that connected the cities of Philadelphia in eastern Pennsylvania with the city of Pittsburgh in western Pennsylvania by railway. During the early 19th century, the only way to transport goods between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh was by wagon. Traveling by wagon could take 3 or 4 weeks, and that was if the weather was good. By 1825, the neighboring state of New York had completed the Erie Canal, providing the first navigable waterway between the Atlantic Ocean and the Great Lakes. Meanwhile, Maryland, to the south, was building the Chesapeake and Ohio Canal. So somebody in Pennsylvania decided, hey, we need a canal if we're going to remain competitive with our neighboring states. So between 1824 and 1826, Pennsylvania began building a statewide canal system that included what was called the Pennsylvania Main Line Canal. The Main Line Canal ran from Columbia on the Susquehanna River in southeast Pennsylvania to Hollidaysburg in the midwestern part of the state. The one drawback to the canal system was the Allegheny Mountains. The Main Line Canal could make it as far west as Hollidaysburg, where it ran into the Eastern Continental Divide. A canal needs to have a water source that comes from a higher elevation than the canal itself. So even using a system of locks, you could only go so far up the mountain before you ran out of higher elevation water supplies. And since water doesn't flow uphill, they devised a method where they would float the canal boats onto rail cars, tow the cars up one side of the mountain and down the other side. The canal boats would then be offloaded into another canal at Johnstown, where it would continue its voyage to Pittsburgh. This became known as the Allegheny Portage Railroad and reduced travel time from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh from 3+ weeks down to 5 days. Concurrent to all of this was the development of the Pennsylvania Railroad, which was incorporated in 1847. The railroad faced a similar problem as the canal: how to get it over the mountains. The Allegheny Portage Railroad system was 36 miles long, and trying to dig a tunnel of that length was neither practical nor possible, and trying to run a train straight up the side of the mountain would be too steep of a grade. They considered building a bridge between the two mountains, but that bridge would need to be 1.5 miles long. Not impossible to do, but it would also be at an over 4% slope, and steam locomotives couldn't climb that steep of a grade. So the railroad construction engineers came up with a plan to build a circuitous route through the mountains to get over them. Work on the Horseshoe Curve began in 1850. 450 Irish coal miners were brought in to do the work. To build the curve, it would be necessary to fill in 2 creek valleys to provide a flat inclined surface on which to lay the tracks. One fill over the Katanning Run Valley and the other fill over the Glen White Run Valley. Using nothing but picks and shovels, black powder, wheelbarrows, and wagons pulled by horses and mules to move the dirt, they filled the 2 huge ravines. This part of the railroad route became known as the Horseshoe Curve, a huge hairpin turn spanning between 2 mountains. The curve is roughly 2,375 feet in length and 1,300 feet in diameter. Coming from the east, the tracks climb at a maximum grade of 1.85%. For every 100 feet of travel, the tracks on the Horseshoe Curve bend 9 degrees 15 minutes, with the entire curve totaling 220 degrees. The total cost of the curve was $2,495,000, or about $90,700,000 in today's money. Upon completion of the Horseshoe Curve in February of 1854, travel time from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh was reduced to less than a day, and instantly made the canals and the Portage Railway obsolete. Over the years, the curve was owned by the Pennsylvania Railroad, the Penn Central Railroad, Conrail, and its present owner, Norfolk Southern. Here you can see the configuration of the mountains before the Horseshoe Curve was built. There are two creeks in the background, Katanning Run and Burgoon Run. Both of these areas had to be filled in with landfill so that they could bridge the tracks from one mountain across to the other. Here is the same view after the track was built. And you can see there are fills up there where Katanning Run and Burgoon Run valleys. Of course, they had to route the water underneath the fill, and then it continues gradually up and continues on to this way on to Pittsburgh. Now you can see they have this lovely incline rail here, officially known as a furuncular, to carry people to the top of the curve here for the observation area. Unfortunately, it is out of service indefinitely, so we're going to have to climb the stairs all the way up. And here goes. There in the distance you can see a Norfolk Southern train inching its way up the curve. It's in an uphill direction right now, so it's moving a little slow, but we'll get a better view of the trains once we get to the top of the hill here.
One eternity later.
And now you can see we have a much better view of the train going around the curve. Excuse me. Oh gee, where did that come from? Looks like they're doing some maintenance on the inbound track, the inside tracks here. That's the extreme downhill end.
We have another locomotive right in the middle of the train helping to get the whole thing up over the mountain. Now some tank cars. Tank cars are nasty, especially when they have a derailment. They get stuff all over the place, and that's usually not a good thing. And there's the end of the train. They got two more pusher locomotives on the tail end. Once they get over the mountain, they'll probably release those, and the other locos can take it from there. Yeah, looky here coming. We got another train in the opposite direction. How cool is that? Coal train. Get down off that picnic table before I fall and break something I need. Yep, several 100,000 pounds of Tesla fuel coming down the mountain. Going down the mountain can be every bit as difficult as going up, because you need to make sure you have enough brake power in your train in order to keep the speed in check so it doesn't run away from you. There you can see the trailing locomotives way up at the top of the hill, just starting to enter the curve. Again, they need the extra locomotives going downhill, not so much for pushing or pulling power, but for braking power. And it is starting to rain. Oh boy, well, at least I'm pretty well done with this one. Just seems to be a passing shower. I'll try to get up under a canopy for a few minutes. The price I pay to bring you these videos. Alright, that's the end of that one. We'll continue on. And here comes another train chugging up the hill. This one appears to be a garbage train. It's got a whole bunch of garbage dumpsters behind it. One of the other rail fans here told me that the train had to stop down in Altoona because one of these dumpsters caught on fire. And they had to bring the fire department in to put it out and take the car out of the train. But they're moving again. And this one, by the way, I'm filming from the safety of the canopy they have up here. I'm not going to walk out of the rain again. But I'd like to know, where are they taking these dumpsters to or from?
Norfolk Southern, milepost 241.0. Track 3, no defects.
Good, no defects.
defects.
That big locomotive you see standing there is the old Pennsylvania 7048. It's an old GP4 locomotive, one of the first oil burners ever to serve the Pennsylvania Railroad. The Pennsylvania Railroad had made all its bread and butter by hauling coal, and they continued to use steam engines as long as they could because they did not want to alienate their coal customers. But eventually it got to the point that they didn't have a choice, and they started using the diesel engines. This is farther up on the west side of the curve. You can see how it continues to crawl all the way up the hill, and once it gets over there, it'll continue on its merry way to wherever it's going. Between the raindrops, you can see these three reservoirs out here. Actually, you can only see two of them, but there's a third one in the middle. These supply water to the city of Altoona, Pennsylvania. While I'm thinking about it, as you can see, there are two mountains here. This one faces the west side, and this one faces the east side. And there are two small river valleys in between the two that ultimately flow to these reservoirs and on down the way. So in order to build this curve, the railroad engineers had to dig dirt that they excavated from the approaches and fill in these two river valleys in order to make a surface for the track to curve around between the two mountains and gradually make its way up the hill. And keep in mind, this was the 1850s. All they had were picks and shovels, black powder, and wheelbarrows, and horses pulling wagons full of dirt. And amazingly, they were able to build it using just those tools. Quite an accomplishment for its day. And so, thank you for joining me on this visit to the Horseshoe Curve here just west of Altoona, Pennsylvania. I hope you enjoyed watching the video as much as I enjoyed making it. Don't forget to subscribe and like and all of that. And we'll see you on the next video. This is the Tactical Panda, signing off.